Hello and welcome to An Hour in the Garden, which this Sunday comes from inside the window overlooking the garden. I did promise that I would do one as soon as I felt better, and I started to feel well, and then it just plummeted downhill again, and it's been probably one of the hardest things I've had to put up with since being properly ill some years ago. And what bothers me is that, I've not been in the garden for 2 weeks now, and it is getting a bit untidy. That's always the case here because, as many of you know, we live on the very, very edge of the wood, and you can basically guarantee that we get about 40 tons of leaves from the ashes and the beeches and the sycamores that we've got all around us, and then the beds are overgrown, and they're doing all right because they weren't that bad when we started. But we were just starting to sort of put them to bed basically for the winter. But they're looking tatty and tidy now, and so we've got things to do. We've got lots to do, but I just can't get out. I went out this morning only to find that I walked about 4 yards into the garden. Now, often I can't walk more than about 10 metres anyway sometimes, simply because of my other problem, but I got a little bit into the garden and then was just completely unable to go any further. It was so cold and windy. Excuse me, it was really, really cold. The reason for going out was to open the chickens up and give them some new food. I managed that, got back in, and then just was so frozen to the bone that I just couldn't do another thing. I was hoping to try and get out today, but yesterday was so difficult, and today is just about the same, really. So, and that with a flu jab. And I was thinking, sat here as I am in the dining room looking out, I just explained the scene. I've got right in front of me, I've got the barbecue. We've got a Weber barbecue thing, which I use from time to time in the summertime. Barbecue is going mad these days, and probably many of you will know this already. And then we've got a kind of a patio area, and then we've got a flower beds that go around the patio, and then we've got herbs to the left of us, mostly rosemary and thyme, and then further along we've got a bed of alpine strawberries that's going to come out. Then we've got a bed that we've put to bed. We've got cover over it, and we've got some rotting material underneath it, so that given some time late next year, we should have some nice well-rotted manure type, not manure, but composted type stuff. And then we've got the chicken hutch, and then we've got some more beds that have had potatoes, cabbages, carrots. We've got another strawberry bed. We like strawberries. Then we've got a few flowers towards the end, and then down at the bottom we've got our apple trees and various pots that we've been growing in. And we tend to like to grow in pots, partly because it's easy for me to manage, and the garden is such that we can't be digging the whole thing up all of the time, so we put pots everywhere and containers of all different shapes and sizes. It's not meant to be pretty, but it works. We've got pots that have had carrots in them, for example. We've got raspberries in pots, and all of that kind of thing. So all of these beds need to be tidied and set right for the winter. We also have a bed that we're going to be planting new garlic in, and as soon as I can get out, really. And I've got about 5 or 6 cabbages in the cabbage bed left over, some of which we will keep, but most of it will actually become food for the chickens. It's very, very windy day, and the chickens, I don't know if you have this problem, if those of you that keep chickens, but the chickens are literally molting. Flipping freezing cold, and they're molting. We've got some nice hay in the hutch. The hutch is a big wooden thing that Darren built. It's beautiful looking and perfect for the job. And we only have 2 of them left at the moment, so they're not producing eggs or anything like that. But we have this kind of ongoing, it's not a war as such, but we've got a family of magpies not far away, and they do like to feed from the chickens, which I try and keep them out. But at the same time, and I've seen this several times, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, at the same time the magpies keep the rats away. And they really do. They stand like sort of sentinels. And when a rat appears, they leap on it. And you get this almighty scrap going on. The alpine strawberries are coming out, as are the mints, because the mints have been in the same container for 3 years now. So I'm going to pull them out, divide some of the roots, divide some of the plants, and then put them into some more containers. We also have a container that this year had sweet peas for the house in it, and they're looking like a tangled mess, so they've got to come out too. And then in the flower bed, we've got all kinds of things. We've got some beautiful lobelias that have now seen better days, and they look as though the dogs sat in them. And we have lupins that have seen better days, and cosmos that need to be cleared away, and the rest of the stuff, the geraniums that we've got in there, seem to be doing perfectly fine. The other plant that we've got to deal with right now, because they are beginning to look very tatty, is the astrantias. And I love astrantias. They've done really well. They need feeding, because over the years the flowers have become smaller and smaller and smaller, and I do like them to be large. They're beautiful looking plants and very, very unusual. They're kind of almost like stars, the plants, the flowers on an astrantia, and they're quite beautiful. Of course, the grass hasn't been touched probably the best part of a month, because we've had so much rain, and parts of the garden are waterlogged. There's not a standing water on the ground, but it's very, very, very wet. And so one of the things that I do need to do is to improve the drainage in certain parts of the garden, and that's an important job. The other important job I've got to do is where the area that we grow in pots, I've basically got that covered with tarpaulins, and then that is covered with bark, and the weeds are coming onto the bark now, and so they need to be dealt with, pulled out. And again, hopefully I will improve with the weather. Now we have finally managed to espalier the apple tree. I've got a small, you might call fence, but I call it kind of a framework really, it's not a fence as such. And I've got 3 vertical spurs growing in there, and they need to be finally pruned properly, but I've got them in position, and they are growing nicely. One of the things you need to avoid is having so much tension on the apple branches themselves that it cuts into the growth. So you need to avoid that, and you can avoid it with various things. Bits of plastic is a good idea. If you've got a wire fence and you're training it on, whilst you've got it training on, it's cutting into it. But a piece of washing up plastic, the washing up bottle, and that you just cut a piece out and put it over the stem, and then, if necessary, tie it on lightly. But that would just protect it a little bit from actually being dug into. Before I got ill, I took in the rhubarbs and the other bits and pieces down at the very bottom, and we cleared the bottom finally. We've got that covered. Essentially, that's where the septic tank is. So I try to keep it free of stuff, but I do grow in pots down there. But one of the big things that we have to deal with, I think urgently, are the conifers that we've got right at the bottom. I don't know when these were put in, but they are Leylandii, and one of them has been trimmed so that it looks essentially like a foot. It does, it looks like a foot. And the reason for that is because the farm, just 50 metres down the hill, that his electricity supply comes right through there. And so consequently, as the Leylandii have grown, the wire has been touched by the trees, and I don't want them to be causing a pain for next door's electricity supply. The other thing is that they are, I mean, it's very beautiful, and I can understand why the previous owner did it. Basically what she did was allowed dog roses to grow within the plant, so that every spring this Leylandii becomes white with flowers. It looks very pretty, but they're a pain in the neck. They grow so quickly, they hang down and catch you in the eye or round the back of the ear when you're trying to work down there. And also these plants drop off. I mean, Leylandii drop off a lot of branches and leaves. So I'm forever tidying them up. So I'm going to, hopefully, I'm going to need some help to do this, but I'm going to give the whole thing a severe trim, a jolly good haircut. And that will also serve to increase the light as we go down there as well. So it's very easy to dream about doing things in the garden, but when you feel ill, it's not that easy to actually do. I mean, on many a time I have to steel myself because of my other problems. I can't always work so well in the garden, but you get out there, and as soon as you do get out there, eventually you start to feel really good about being there, and it's an excellent way of escaping the world and its problems. However, I was thinking about this. I mean, I've not been able to be in the garden now for 2 weeks. What an absolute catastrophe that would be for a family who had to literally rely upon their growing to live. We're intensely, well, I was going to say lucky, I'm not quite sure that's the right thing to say, but we're intensely kind of intertwined in this international food provision thing. But if you go back, I've been reading quite a lot about medieval gardening recently. If you go back to the times when the serf paid his rent for his land from the lord of the manor, usually in work, then their abilities to do and succeed completely always depended directly on their health. So I suppose, whereas I would love to be able to produce all of our food, I can't. I don't have enough space. I'm glad in a way that I really don't have to. I'm sorry about the short nature of this one, but I'm sure you'll understand. We will get back into an hour in the garden as soon as we're able to do so. And it's been it's been really good for me to be able to sit here and just chat with you about what I've got to do in the garden, because at the moment I'm not in a position to do so. So have a great time in your garden this week. The weather is going to get better, I believe. I strongly hope, anyway. And then also we're going to, one way or another, succeed in our plans to make a really good food-growing garden. That's what we say every year, isn't it? See you soon.